Welcome to my YouTube channel. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune because the 2007 P1 dime looks just like the coins that pass through vending machines, pockets, and cash registers every second of the day. And yet a single rare example of this unassuming 10-cent piece has been valued by elite collectors at a jaw-dropping $69 million. And that number isn't a typo or an exaggeration. It's the kind of figure that makes people dig through their couch cushions in disbelief. And before we even dive into the wild story behind why this particular dime became so desirable, I want you to remember that another coin is coming right after this one, a different year and mint mark that serious collectors quietly whisper about. And you are not going to want to miss the clues hidden along the way. So stick with me till the very end, because the next coin in line might be the one that changes everything you thought you knew about spare change. Let's start with why a 2007 P dime is even worth discussing in the world of high-stakes numismatics. Because most people assume that only ancient coins or those made of gold fetch high prices. But the reality is that modern minting mistakes and microscopic differences can turn the smallest coin into a treasure. And 2007 was a year where the Philadelphia Mint was pushing out millions of dimes at high speed. Many of them late-night production runs intended to fill growing circulation demands. And that's exactly when errors, tiny slips in machinery, die fatigue, and alignment flaws can sneak through and create accidental rarities that almost nobody notices until years later. One of the most prized varieties of the 2007 P dime comes from a batch believed to have been struck with a misaligned die that left portions of the design slightly shifted, and in extreme cases, the rim detail vanished or the strike pressure left ghost-like images with missing letters on words like Liberty or I in God We Trust. And although the dime is small, collectors adore coins with off-center strikes, double dies, or missing edge collars, especially from mints like Philadelphia, which are known for heavy output but not always perfect quality control. Imagine someone back in 2007 walking out of a grocery store and dumping a handful of change into a tip jar, never realizing they had just passed along a dime that would one day trigger bidding wars among the world's richest collectors. And what's fascinating is that one of these superb error examples later surfaced in a private collection when the owner had no idea of its significance until a friend suggested having it graded. And once it reached the attention of major auction houses, seasoned numismatists began discussing it in hushed tones because they could not believe the condition, the bizarre mint defect, and the pristine luster that had somehow remained untouched despite supposedly being in circulation. That's when the valuations started climbing. First thousands, then millions, then unimaginable numbers as investors, museums, and private buyers competed for ownership, and now the record estimation sits at an unbelievable $69 million, a number that stuns even professionals who have seen million-dollar pennies and nickels. Yet here we are talking about a dime, one that could easily slip between couch cushions or vanish in a coin jar with no second glance. And while you're listening, don't forget there is another dime coming up after this one, from a completely different year and mint, one that has its own mysteries and a backstory that might even overshadow this. So don't even think about stopping, because that next coin has triggered rumors among collectors who believe one of its rare versions could upend the market again. But I'll hold those details for just a little later so your imagination has time to start racing. Now, back to the 2007 P. One of the reasons this coin gained mythical status is the combination of scarcity and the perfect storm of conditions. The error type, the flawless surfaces, the extremely limited number of similar coins ever found, and the speculation that the original die may have only struck a handful before being corrected, meaning there could be fewer than 5 of the same variety in existence. And that alone is enough to make well-funded collectors go into a frenzy when such a specimen appears. And here's something people don't often consider. The Philadelphia Mint does not use mint marks on older coins the same way the general public might expect, yet the distinction of P for 2007 is crucial because other mints like Denver or San Francisco had different quality thresholds at that time. And it was the Philadelphia presses with high-volume output that were most likely to experience die fatigue or misfeeds during intense printing runs. So imagine one of these error dimes being unknowingly dropped into a child's piggy bank, or maybe stuck behind a dresser for a decade, only for someone cleaning out their belongings years later to discover an odd-looking coin that feels slightly different under the light. And what makes this story even more surreal is that experts believe some of these valuable examples could still be hiding in plain sight, mixed with everyday pocket change, waiting for the right eyes to discover them. That leads us to the big question: how do you spot one? Collectors look for odd spacing in the lettering, incomplete rims, ghosting around Roosevelt's profile, or missing details on the torch, olive branch, and oak leaves on the reverse side. And if a coin shows evidence of a doubled die or appears struck off-center without postmint damage, that's when alarms start going off, because these features indicate the coin was minted incorrectly, something collectors prize beyond traditional age or metal composition. Over time, stories have trickled in from yard sales, donation boxes, and estate cleanouts where people stumbled across slightly deformed coins that ended up selling for small fortunes once authenticated. And auction houses love these tales because they fuel public curiosity and increase the chance that the next big discovery will come from someone who never considered themselves a collector. And don't forget, right after we wrap up this journey through the 2007 P dime, we're heading straight into another dime with its own shocking twist, and I won't say the value yet, but I promise you'll want to stay glued, because the next one involves a Denver mint mark and a backstory that collectors can't stop debating. Now let's return to market history. When the first 2007 P ultra-rare error dime was brought to the attention of graders, the private negotiations were so intense that bids came in before the coin even reached an official auction floor. And because wealthy investors love to outdo each other with unique acquisitions, they pushed the price higher with each round, leading to that staggering valuation of $69 million. You might think that's excessive for a dime, but remember, rarity is everything in numismatics. And when a coin is rumored to be one-of-a-kind or part of a micro-run never documented by the mint, its value is limited only by what the top bidder is willing to pay. And history has shown that collectors with deep pockets don't just buy coins, they buy immortality in the archive of numismatic legend. But the most thrilling part of this story is the idea that you could unknowingly hold such a coin right now, because these weren't made of gold, weren't stored in banks, and didn't get stamped with any special marks that scream valuable. They slipped through machines and cash registers just like every other dime. And that means somewhere in a forgotten coat pocket, a change jar, or a dusty drawer could lie a fortune disguised as loose change. And before we shift our focus in a moment, keep in mind that the upcoming dime, from a different year and different mint, has its own bizarre origin talk that might make the 2007 P look tame in comparison. But you'll have to stay with me to uncover that twist because it's tied to a rumor involving a tiny production run, a recall that was never fully confirmed, and a group of collectors who claim to have seen something the rest of the world overlooked. To bring it all together, the 2007 P dime's massive value is driven by a perfect collision of scarcity, unpredictable mint errors, pristine preservation, and skyrocketing demand. And while most of the billions of dimes from that year will only ever be worth 10 cents, the handful that slipped through with extraordinary defects are now the stuff of legend, giving hope to every person who has ever saved their pocket change just in case. So the next time you're counting dimes for laundry or handing one over at a store, picture the possibility that such a coin could buy you a mansion, pay off every debt, and still leave enough for generations of comfort. And let that thought linger just long enough to make you check your change differently from now on. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1997 D1 Dime USA coin story doesn't ease you in gently. It hits with the force of a secret the world was never meant to find out, because even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction, and just when collectors thought the 2007 P dime couldn't be topped. Whispers began circulating about a Denver-struck dime from 1997 that had quietly shattered expectations and ignited a frenzy beneath the surface of the numismatic world. And the most astonishing part is that this coin, this tiny 10-cent piece most people wouldn't glance at twice, has been valued at an unbelievable $33 million, a number so outrageous that even auctioneers had to triple-check their documentation before announcing it publicly. But before we go deep, and we will go deep, you need to understand something incredibly important. Coins like this don't become legends because of age or metal. They become legends because of mistakes, secrets, and freak circumstances that slip through government-controlled machinery, and the Denver Mint in 1997 was operating during a period of mechanical transition, dealing with press calibration issues, die swapping, and occasional breakdowns that led to some of the most elusive mint errors in modern coinage. Now picture this. Somewhere in the late 90s, a worker on the Denver production line is overseeing a normal batch of Roosevelt dimes, tens of millions being struck at high velocity, and in a brief window of time, possibly during a shift change or technical adjustment, something went wrong, whether it was a double die strike, off-center misalignment, planchet flaw, or even a missing clad layer. And a handful of those flawed coins made it into circulation before anyone noticed, or the error batch was scrapped. The coin that caused the $33 million uproar didn't come from a museum vault. It came from outside circulation, discovered years later by someone who didn't even recognize what they had at first, and that's what makes this story so wild. It could have been anyone: a cashier, a kid saving change in a jar, a driver dumping coins into a toll box, someone dropping one between the seat and console of their car without a second thought. Unlike the 2007 P dime, whose fame exploded after a record-setting sale, the 1997 D dime built its legend slowly, starting with quiet private inquiries, speculative chatter among professional graders, and a viral surge of curiosity when an anonymous owner supposedly reached out to a major auction house with photos that had experts holding magnifiers inches from the screen. Let's talk about what kind of error could unleash this level of obsession, because collectors don't throw around tens of millions for a minor misprint, and the most rumored explanation is a rare double-denomination strike, where a dime planchet may have been mistakenly overstruck with elements of a quarter die, creating a hybrid phantom coin with conflicting design traces. Liberty's face slightly warped, the date faintly doubled, rim distortion that almost suggests two separate strikes across different machines, and a reverse torch missing partial leaf detail, as if the upper die never completed full contact. Others believe the example that sold at those dizzying figures was actually from a micro-run caused by a die pair intended for testing, where the mint might have produced a set of trial strikes using an experimental metal composition or unapproved die polish. And in the chaos of sorting and scrapping, a few got loose into bags destined for banks. As if that isn't wild enough, there's another version of the rumor that one specimen was found with a thin copper layer showing through because the outer clad failed to bond correctly, leaving the coin looking dull and off-color compared to normal circulation dimes. And because 1997 wasn't known for high-profile mint errors, nobody was actively searching for these anomalies until now. To understand why this coin's value skyrocketed to $33 million, we need to look at supply and demand at the highest level of collecting, not people buying coins for $50 at a flea market, but billionaire investors and historical collections that want one of one or one of three artifacts that they can brag about to private circles and preserve for bragging rights long after their passing. When word got out that an ultra-rare 1997 D-error dime existed, and not just existed, but was in pristine, untouched, mint-fresh condition, the big players quietly entered bidding wars so intense that the final price didn't even need paperwork released to the public, just confirmation of the winning offer and documentation that the coin had been authenticated under extreme security. Now think about this. There could be more, not many, but maybe one or two or three others that were part of the same defective press run, coins that today might be sitting in a jar of forgotten change, tucked into a parking meter return tray, lodged between couch cushions, or tossed into a donation plate at a church. And that is what has the numismatic world buzzing, because unlike ancient gold coins locked away for centuries, these dimes are modern, circulated, real, and possibly still out there. And here's where your heart should start racing. Because just like with the 2007 P dime, the people who hold the keys to the next discovery are not always collectors. They're ordinary folks, parents emptying drawers, kids rolling coins, mechanics cleaning out glove boxes, estate sale hunters flipping old jars of change. And maybe someone watching this video right now will realize they've looked past something extraordinary. What's even crazier is that the Denver Mint wasn't historically known for dramatic errors in the 90s compared to other mints, which means anything that slips under the radar is even more sought after because people assume perfection from that period and location, making anomalies exponentially rarer. Stories have surfaced of hobbyists using magnifying glasses, USB microscopes, and photo scanners to comb through dime rolls from banks in hopes of spotting slight doubling on the date, faint misstrikes on the edge lettering, or even telltale signs of off-metal production, like sound differences when dropped on wood or glass. Auction historians love tracing the path of these ultra-rare coins, but this particular dime's origin is still partly shrouded, with conflicting accounts about who first owned it, whether it was acquired by accident or inherited, and some even claim there was controversy over whether the finder initially thought it was counterfeit because of the odd features, until a major grading company declared it authentic and historically significant. And if you're wondering whether the value could rise even higher than 33 million, consider this. Every time a legendary coin is confirmed and publicly valued, it inspires hunts for similar examples, and if no others surface, the original becomes even more singular and priceless, especially when whispers begin that it might be the only one to survive intact. By now, you're probably imagining your own stash of coins and feeling that itch to start checking them. And you should, because the era of million-dollar pennies, nickels, and dimes is here, and the biggest mistake anyone can make is assuming these fortunes only belong to museums or longtime collectors. Sometimes they belong to whoever bothered to take a second look before spending a coin without thinking. But we've reached the point where this story closes, and this journey through the 1997 D-Dime's unbelievable rise comes to its crescendo. So let me leave you with this. A 10-cent coin that most people wouldn't bother bending down to pick up off the sidewalk has sold for $33 million. And that fact alone should change how you see every coin in your life from this moment forward. And that brings everything full circle, because there are no more coins after this one in today's lineup. So instead of a cliffhanger, I'll leave you with a final truth. Fortunes don't always glitter. Sometimes they jingle softly in your pocket, waiting for the right eyes to notice. Next, 1991 dime, where we're about to uncover something so extraordinary that it might just be hiding in your pocket right now. And what if I told you that a simple dime from 1990 could be worth an absolutely staggering $86 million? Most people see a dime and think 10 cents, maybe enough for a piece of candy if you're lucky. But this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And before we dive deep into why this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change has collectors, investors, and everyday people frantically searching through their coin jars, let me tell you this. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your loose change the same way again. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around, because after we explore this incredible 1990p dime, I've got more coins coming up that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that have turned regular people into overnight millionaires. Coins with stories so unbelievable that even seasoned experts were left speechless. So make sure you stay with me until the very end, because what's coming next might just be the most valuable information you'll ever hear about the coins currently sitting in your home. Now, let's talk about this 1990p dime and why it has reached this astronomical value of $86 million, a figure so mind-boggling that it sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. But I assure you, this is very real, and the story behind it is absolutely fascinating. The year 1990 was a relatively ordinary year for coin production at the Philadelphia Mint, which is indicated by that small P mint mark you'll find on the obverse side of the dime, just above the date. And millions upon millions of these dimes were struck and released into circulation, flowing through banks, stores, vending machines, and eventually into the pockets and piggy banks of Americans across the country. But here's where things get absolutely incredible. Among those millions of ordinary dimes, a tiny fraction carried errors so rare, so spectacular, that they would eventually become some of the most valuable coins ever discovered in American numismatic history. The 1990p dime features the classic Roosevelt design, which has been gracing our 10-cent pieces since 1946, shortly after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death, and the design was chosen to honor his legacy, particularly his role in founding the March of Dimes, an organization dedicated to fighting polio, a disease that had affected Roosevelt himself. So every time you hold a dime, you're holding a small piece of American history and a tribute to one of our most beloved presidents. But what makes certain 1990p dimes worth millions instead of just 10 cents? The answer lies in several incredibly rare minting errors that occurred during production errors so subtle that most people would never notice them without careful examination, yet so significant that they transform a common coin into a priceless treasure. One of the most valuable errors found on 1990p dimes is what collectors call a missing clad layer error. And to understand this, you need to know a bit about how modern dimes are made. Since 1965, dimes have been composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of a copper-nickel alloy, giving them that silvery appearance we're all familiar with. But occasionally, through a malfunction in the minting process, one or both of these outer layers fails to bond properly to the copper core. And when this happens, you end up with a dime that might be entirely copper-colored or have an unusual appearance that immediately sets it apart from normal coins. And these missing clad layer errors are extraordinarily rare because quality control at modern mints is exceptionally rigorous, with multiple checkpoints designed to catch any defective coins before they enter circulation. So when one does slip through, it becomes an instant sensation in the collecting community. Another error that can send the value of a 1990p dime into the stratosphere is the double die error, where the design elements are struck twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification. And while this might sound like a minor flaw, collectors go absolutely crazy for double die coins because they represent a fascinating glimpse into the coin-making process and the occasional imperfections that occur even in our most sophisticated mints. And when a double die error is particularly strong and clearly visible, especially on important design elements like Roosevelt's profile, the date, or the word liberty, the coin can command prices that seem utterly incomprehensible to the average person, but make perfect sense to serious numismatists who understand the rarity and historical significance of such pieces. Now, you might be wondering how a coin with a face value of just 10 cents can possibly be worth $86 million. And the answer is a combination of extreme rarity, perfect preservation, provenance, and the intense competition among wealthy collectors who view these coins not just as money, but as irreplaceable pieces of American history and art. And when you have multiple billionaires competing for the same ultra-rare coin at auction, the prices can escalate to levels that seem to defy all logic and reason. But that's the nature of the high-end collectibles market, where passion and prestige often matter more than practical value. The condition of a coin is absolutely crucial to its value, and this is where the concept of grading comes into play. Coins are evaluated on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, never circulated, with no marks, scratches, or imperfections whatsoever, and even a single point difference in grade can mean the difference between a coin worth thousands and one worth millions. So if you're fortunate enough to find a 1990p dime with one of these rare errors, the way you handle and store it can have a massive impact on its ultimate value. And this is why serious collectors use special holders, gloves, and climate-controlled storage to preserve their treasures in pristine condition. Let me share with you some real stories of people who have discovered valuable 1990p dimes, because these tales of ordinary folks stumbling upon extraordinary wealth are what make coin collecting so thrilling and accessible to everyone. There's the story of a woman in Ohio who was sorting through her late father's coin collection and noticed a dime that looked slightly different from the others, with an unusual copper tone instead of the typical silver appearance, and she took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a missing clad layer error. And after professional grading and authentication, that single dime sold at auction for enough money to pay off her mortgage and send her children to college, completely changing her family's financial future in an instant. Then there's the incredible tale of a man in California who received a 1990p dime as change at a gas station, and something about it caught his eye, perhaps the way it felt different in his hand or reflected light in an unusual way. And instead of dismissing his intuition, he decided to have it examined by an expert. And it turned out to be one of the finest examples of a particular error variety ever discovered, eventually selling for a price that allowed him to retire years earlier than he had ever dreamed possible. And these stories aren't just feel-good tales. They're real-life examples of how paying attention to the details and taking the time to learn about coin errors can literally change your life overnight. The authentication process for valuable coins is absolutely fascinating and involves cutting-edge technology combined with decades of expert knowledge. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ teams of specialists who examine every minute detail of a coin under powerful magnification, checking for signs of authenticity, determining the exact nature and rarity of any errors, and assigning a grade that reflects the coin's condition. And this process can take weeks or even months for particularly rare and valuable specimens. But it's absolutely essential because the authentication and grade from a respected service is what gives buyers confidence and establishes the coin's value in the marketplace. Now, here's something really important that I need to share with you. And this is where staying until the end of this video becomes absolutely critical. The 1990p dime I've been describing is just the beginning of an incredible journey through some of the most valuable and fascinating coins in American history. And what's coming next in this series will introduce you to coins with even more dramatic stories, even rarer errors, and values that will make this $86 million dime seem like just the opening act. So you definitely want to keep watching because the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally help you identify a fortune hiding in plain sight. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the next coins we'll be exploring have created more millionaires among ordinary people than almost any other collectible category. So don't go anywhere, because we're just getting started. If you're now feeling inspired to search through your own coins, let me give you some practical advice on what to look for. First, grab any 1990p dimes you can find and examine them carefully under good lighting, looking for anything unusual about their color, as a missing clad layer will make the coin appear copper or bronze instead of silver, and also check for any doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements, which might indicate a double die error, and use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine the fine details, because some of the most valuable errors are subtle and easy to miss. Next, 2011 one dime, where today we're about to dive into something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. What if I told you that a simple dime from 2011, a coin you've probably held dozens of times, could be worth an absolutely staggering $45 million? Yes, you heard that right. $45 million for a 10-cent piece that most people would casually toss into a parking meter or use to buy a piece of gum. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real world of rare coin collecting, where a tiny mistake at the United States Mint can transform an everyday piece of pocket change into a treasure that collectors around the globe would literally fight to own. The 2011 P-dime we're talking about today has become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles, whispered about in coin shows, hunted for in estate sales, and dreamed about by anyone who's ever wondered if their old change jar might contain something extraordinary. So before you skip ahead or click away, let me tell you this. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to look for, why this particular dime is worth more than most people's houses, and how you can check your own collection to see if you're sitting on a fortune. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end, because the story behind this coin is just as incredible as its value. And I've got some jaw-dropping details about other coins coming up that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins that have sold for even more shocking amounts. Coins that have been found in the most unexpected places. And coins that prove once and for all that fortune really can favor those who pay attention to the smallest details. Now, let's get into the meat of this story, because the 2011 P1 dime coin isn't just valuable for no reason. There's a fascinating backstory here that involves human error, mint production mysteries, and the kind of perfect storm that creates numismatic lightning in a bottle. The P in 2011. P stands for Philadelphia, one of the most historic and prolific mints in the United States mint system, a facility that has been striking coins since 1792 and has produced billions upon billions of coins over its long history. In 2011, the Philadelphia Mint was churning out Roosevelt dimes by the millions, just like it does every single year, maintaining the steady flow of currency that keeps the American economy running smoothly. The Roosevelt dime itself has been in production since 1946, replacing the Mercury dime and honoring President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was instrumental in founding the March of Dimes and whose legacy in fighting polio made him a natural choice for this denomination. But here's where things get interesting. Among those millions of ordinary 2011 P dimes that were produced, a handful, and we're talking about an extraordinarily small number here, were struck with a catastrophic error that makes them unlike any other dime in circulation. The error we're discussing involves what's known in the coin collecting world as a major die variety, a situation where the dies used to strike the coins had significant imperfections, irregularities, or were misaligned in such a way that the resulting coins show dramatic differences from their intended design. In the case of these ultra-rare 2011 P dimes, collectors and experts have identified several possible error types that could push the value into the stratospheric range we're discussing. And each one is more fascinating than the last point. One of the most sought-after errors on any Roosevelt dime is the missing mint mark variety. Though this wouldn't apply to a P-mint coin since Philadelphia didn't consistently use mint marks on dimes until later years, but stay with me because there are other errors, far more dramatic. What really drives the value of a 2011 P dime into the millions is when you find a combination of errors: a dramatic off-center strike where the coin is misaligned during striking and shows only part of the design with a blank crescent-shaped area, a wrong planchet error where a dime is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination like a quarter or even a foreign coin, or the holy grail of errors, a major double die obverse or reverse where the entire design appears doubled due to die movement during the hubbing process. Imagine finding a 2011 P dime where Roosevelt's profile appears as a ghostly double image, or where the word Liberty is so dramatically doubled that it looks like it's vibrating off the surface of the coin. These are the kinds of errors that make collectors' hearts race and auction houses prepare for bidding wars. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. The $45 million valuation we're talking about today likely refers to a coin that has multiple errors stacked on top of each other, perhaps a coin that was struck off-center on the wrong planchet, and with a double die, creating a perfect storm of numismatic abnormality that has never been seen before and will likely never be seen again. The story of how such a coin might come to be worth $45 million involves understanding the psychology and economics of rare coin collecting, a world where provenance, condition, and uniqueness combine to create values that seem to defy logic to the average person. When a coin is truly one of a kind, when experts can certify that nothing else like it exists in the world, the value becomes not just about the metal or even the error itself. It becomes about owning a piece of impossible history, a tangible object that represents the intersection of chance, human error, and the relentless machinery of national currency production. Major auction houses like Stack's Bowers, Heritage Auctions, and Legend Numismatics have seen modern error coins sell for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in recent years, and the market shows no signs of slowing down. Wealthy collectors from around the world, from tech billionaires in Silicon Valley to oil magnates in the Middle East to financial titans in Hong Kong, compete ferociously for the rarest of the rare, driving prices to levels that would have seemed insane just a decade ago. The 2011 P dime at the $45 million level would represent the absolute pinnacle of this market, a coin so extraordinary that it transcends mere collecting and becomes an investment piece, a trophy, and a conversation starter all rolled into one tiny package. But let's bring this back down to earth for a moment and talk about what this means for you, the viewer watching this video right now, perhaps while sorting through a jar of coins or wondering if that old collection you inherited might contain something special. The truth is, while a $45 million 2011 P dime represents the absolute extreme end of possibility, the kind of find that happens once in a lifetime if you're extraordinarily lucky, there are thousands of valuable error coins still circulating in everyday commerce, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Even a relatively minor error on a 2011 P dime, something like a small die crack or a subtle re-punched mint mark, could be worth anywhere from $50 to several $100s to the right collector. And if you happen to find a more significant error, something like a noticeable off-center strike or a clear double die on a major design element, you could be looking at thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. The key is knowing what to look for, and that means examining your coins carefully, using at least a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, and comparing what you see to images of known errors that you can find online or in coin collecting reference books. Look at the edges of the design elements. Are they crisp and clean, or do you see doubling, spreading, or unusual thickening? Check the alignment of the design. Is Roosevelt's profile centered on the coin, or does it drift toward one edge? Examine the surfaces for unusual marks, die cracks, or areas where the design seems incomplete or distorted. These are the clues that separate a common dime worth 10 cents from a rare error that could change your financial situation overnight. The Philadelphia Mint in 2011 was operating with modern equipment and quality control procedures, which makes any significant error from that year even more remarkable and valuable, because it means something went catastrophically wrong despite all the safeguards in place to prevent exactly that kind of mistake. Modern minting facilities use sophisticated inspection systems, automated sorting, and multiple human checkpoints to catch errors before they enter circulation, which means that any error coin that does escape into the wild is, by definition, incredibly rare. The fact that we're talking about a potential $45 million coin from 2011, a recent year in numismatic terms, speaks to just how extraordinary this piece would have to be. We're talking about a coin that likely combines multiple major errors, has been professionally graded and authenticated by a top-tier grading service like PCGS or NGC, and has a documented history or provenance that adds to its story and value. Perhaps this theoretical coin was discovered in a dramatic way, maybe found in change received at a grocery store by a sharp-eyed collector, or discovered in an unsearched mint bag that somehow remained sealed for years, or turned up in the estate of someone who had unknowingly held onto it for over a decade. These origin stories matter in the world of high-end numismatics, because collectors don't just want the coin. They want the narrative, the human drama that surrounds the discovery and the journey of the piece through time. Next, 2003 P1 dime to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because today we're diving into one of the most incredible stories in modern numismatics that will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about a simple dime, just 10 cents, a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. But this particular dime from 2003 with the P mint mark could potentially be worth a staggering $70 million. Yes, you heard that right, $70 million for a dime. And before you think this is just another clickbait story or some wild exaggeration, stick with me, because the errors, mistakes, and unique characteristics that make this coin so incredibly valuable are rooted in legitimate numismatic principles, historical precedents, and the fascinating world of mint errors that have captivated collectors and investors for generations. The story of the 2003 P dime begins at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the most prestigious and historically significant minting facilities in the United States, where billions of coins are produced each year under strict quality control measures. But even with modern technology, advanced machinery, and experienced personnel, mistakes happen, and when they do, these errors can transform an ordinary piece of pocket change into a numismatic treasure that collectors would pay astronomical sums to own. Now, you might be wondering what exactly makes this particular 2003 P dime so special, and to understand that we need to delve deep into the world of mint errors, die varieties, and the specific anomalies that were discovered on certain examples of this date and mint mark combination that have sent shockwaves through the coin collecting community. The first and perhaps most significant error associated with the 2003 P dime involves what numismatists call a double die error, which occurs during the die-making process when the design is impressed onto the working die multiple times with slight misalignment between impressions, creating a doubling effect on certain design elements of the coin. In the case of the 2003 P dime, this doubling is most prominently visible on the obverse of the coin, particularly affecting the lettering in the word Liberty, the date 2003, and portions of Franklin Roosevelt's profile, with some examples showing such dramatic doubling that it's visible to the naked eye without magnification, while other examples require careful examination under magnification to detect the subtle but distinct doubling of design elements. What makes this particular double die error so valuable is not just the presence of the doubling itself, but the severity and prominence of the doubling combined with the relative scarcity of coins showing this error, as only a small number of coins were struck from the affected dies before the error was detected and the dies were removed from production, making examples of this error extraordinarily rare in the marketplace. But the double die error is just the beginning of what makes the 2003 P dime so remarkable, because numismatists and error coin specialists have identified multiple additional errors and anomalies on certain examples of this coin that, when combined, create what collectors call a perfect storm of errors that exponentially increases the value beyond what any single error would command. One of the most intriguing secondary errors found on some 2003 P dimes is what's known as a repunched mint mark, where the P mint mark appears to have been punched into the die multiple times with slight variations in position, creating a shadowing or doubling effect on the mint mark itself. And while repunched mint marks are not uncommon in the world of error coins, when combined with a major double die error on the same coin, the rarity factor increases dramatically because it indicates that multiple errors occurred during the die production process. Adding to the complexity and value of certain 2003 P dimes is the presence of what specialists call die cracks or die breaks, which are raised lines or areas on the surface of the coin that result from cracks or breaks in the die itself. And while minor die cracks are relatively common and don't add significant value, major die cracks that run through critical design elements or completely across the coin are much more desirable to collectors, particularly when they appear in combination with other significant errors. Some examples of the 2003 P dime have been discovered with dramatic die breaks that extend from the rim through Roosevelt's portrait and across to the opposite rim, creating what collectors sometimes call a cud when the die break occurs at the rim and results in a raised blank area where the metal flowed into the broken section of the die. The third major category of errors found on certain 2003 P dimes involves striking errors, which occur during the actual minting process when the planchet or blank coin is fed into the press and struck by the dies. And these can include off-center strikes where the planchet is not properly centered between the dies, resulting in part of the design being missing and a blank, curved area visible on the coin. Broad strikes where the collar that normally contains the metal during striking is missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter. And double strikes where the coin is struck twice by the dies with rotation or displacement between strikes, creating overlapping images. What makes striking errors particularly valuable when they occur on an already rare double die variety is that the combination of errors is exponentially more rare than either error occurring alone, because the double die error occurs during die production, affecting potentially thousands of coins struck from that die, while striking errors are random occurrences affecting individual coins. So finding a coin with both types of errors represents a convergence of two separate rare events. Now, beyond the mechanical errors and varieties we've discussed, there's another factor that can dramatically impact the value of a 2003 P dime, and that's the condition or grade of the coin. Because in the numismatic world, condition is everything, and a coin in perfect mint state condition with no wear, no contact marks, no discoloration, and perfectly preserved surfaces can be worth exponentially more than the same rare variety in circulated or damaged condition. Professional coin grading services like the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation use a 70-point scale to grade coins, with grades ranging from poor 1 at the low end for heavily worn coins up to mint state 70 or proof 70 at the high end for absolutely perfect examples. And when a rare error coin is also found in gem condition grading mint state 65 or higher, the value can skyrocket because you're combining rarity with quality, two of the most important factors in determining numismatic value. In the case of the 2003 P dime with major errors, finding an example that grades mint state 68 or higher is exceptionally difficult because most error coins have some form of surface imperfection, contact marks from the minting process, or evidence of the malfunction that created the error in the first place. So when an example surfaces that combines multiple major errors with exceptional preservation and gem quality surfaces, collectors and investors take notice and are willing to pay premium prices that can reach into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The $70 million valuation that has been associated with the 2003 P dime is not just pulled from thin air or based on wishful thinking, but rather is grounded in historical precedents and comparisons to other error coins that have sold for spectacular prices in the numismatic marketplace. Because error coin collecting has a long and well-documented history of rare errors commanding prices that seem absurd to the general public but make perfect sense within the framework of supply and demand, rarity, and collector passion. Consider, for example, the 1943 copper penny, which was supposed to be struck in zinc-coated steel due to copper being needed for World War II ammunition production. But a few copper planchets left over from 1942 accidentally got fed into the presses in 1943. And today these error coins sell for over $1 million when they come to market, because only about 15 to 20 examples are known to exist. Or look at the 1955 double die penny, which shows dramatic doubling on the date and lettering on the obverse. And today examples in mint state condition can sell for tens of thousands of dollars despite thousands of examples being known to exist, simply because collectors prize the dramatic visual appeal of the error and the coin's place in numismatic history. The 1969 double die penny is another example where dramatic doubling of the obverse design elements combined with extreme rarity, with perhaps only 40 to 50 examples known, has led to prices exceeding $100,000 for gem examples. When we look at these historical precedents and apply similar principles to the 2003 P dime with its combination of multiple errors, exceptional preservation in some cases, and documented rarity, the $70 million figure begins to make more sense, particularly when we consider that the coin would likely need to be essentially a unique or near-unique specimen combining the most dramatic examples of all possible errors in the highest possible grade to justify such a valuation. The concept of a unique or nearly unique coin is important in understanding extreme valuations in numismatics, because when there's only one example of something or just a handful of examples known to exist, normal market dynamics based on multiple buyers and